Argentina's president tests positive for COVID-19. Hundreds of internally displaced people from Mozambique find shelter a week after an Islamist attack on Palma. And Pope Francis holds a scaled-back Good Friday ceremony amid the pandemic. Hello and welcome to TeleSUR. I'm José Daniel Lopez in Quito, Ecuador, and this is from the south. Argentine President Alberto Fernandez has tested positive for COVID-19. President Fernandez, who has been vaccinated against COVID-19, said that his antigen test came back positive after a slight fever and headache. He's now waiting for the results of a PCR test as well. The president, who turned 62 on Friday, was in isolation as a precaution, but said he was physically well. Fernandez was inoculated with the Russian Sputnik V vaccine and had his second shot on February 11th. Argentina is facing a second wave of the coronavirus with a sustained rise in cases. The country of 44 million people has recorded more than 2.3 million infections and over 55,000 deaths from COVID-19. Still in Argentina has received a second batch of 1 million Sinopharm COVID-19 vaccines from China. With this new shipment, the country has received nearly 7 million doses so far, while awaiting to the arrival of the 11th shipment of the Russian Sputnik V vaccine scheduled for Saturday. The Argentine government hopes to accelerate its vaccination campaign in order to achieve the immunization of the most vulnerable groups by the end of April. New restrictions are also being planned as the country faces a new surge in cases. Argentina has accumulated over 2.3 million cases and close to 56,000 COVID-19 related deaths. And Argentina has created a commission to honor the veterans and victims of the Malvinas War. Argentine Minister of Defense Agustin Rossi announced the decision on the 39th anniversary of the beginning of the Malvinas War, known by the British occupancy forces as the Falklands War. The commission will also honor those who died later due to the post-traumatic stress. Argentina continues to claim its sovereignty rights over the Malvinas Islands, which the United Kingdom continues to disregard. The Mexican capital, usually busy with hundreds of thousands of worshippers during the Easter celebrations, was calm on Friday as pandemic restrictions affected the Passion of the Christ reenactment that has been performed in the city for almost 2 centuries. For the past 170 years, the ceremony has offered an economic boom for the sprawling borough of Iztapalapa. However, authorities only allowed the religious ceremony to be held behind closed doors for the second year running due to the pandemic. Mexico has registered a total of 200,000 COVID-19 deaths, while the untested but suspected victims brings that toll to over 320,000. Cuban health authorities have reported success in applying the domestically produced drug nasalferon to people infected with COVID-19 as part of the improved protocol for confronting the disease. Our correspondent in Havana, Fabiola Lopez, brings us more details in the following report.
In Boyeros municipality, in the capital of Cuba, nurse Anaisa sets out to verify the use of nalsalferon in this family contact of a positive COVID-19 case, as she does every day.
It's been really great. I have not had any adverse reactions, and I feel quite well. I have improved a lot. I had a little burning in the throat at the beginning, and that disappeared. I have felt good, and we tested negative in the PCR that we took. And how much did the nasalferon cost? Nothing, of course. It's only here in Cuba that you see that free medicine, free care.
The country's strategy is that all persons who are a contact of a confirmed case should institutionally isolate it. But in territories such as Havana, where the greatest number of cases is reported, home isolation includes measures similar to the care provided in isolation centers.
An epidemiological survey is carried out. The epidemiological survey is conducted with every patient tested positive to an antigen or PCR test. All home and outside of the home contacts of the patient are traced, and nasalferon supplies are located and applied in all polyclinics with established cold chain.
When it is going to be applied, the basic health team, either the doctor or the nurse, explains how the drug is going to be used. That is very easy to handle, for all ages too, although it is not being used in pediatric care. A drop is applied in each nostril every 12 hours. That is 4 drops for 10 days, which makes up the 40 drops that the bottle contains. Nalzaferon is a drug developed by Cuban biotechnology, derived from interferon, which, according to its developers, prevents the replication of the SARS-CoV-2 virus and modifies the number of colonies present in the body, in addition to strengthening the immune system.
Medically, nalzaferon is a product that is applied with a prophylactic purpose, which means to prevent infection. In this case, by SARS-CoV-2, the immunomodulatory properties of interferon help to strengthen your immune system in the absence of the virus, so that when the individual is exposed to the virus, the immune system is able to fight it more strongly and thus avoid infection. And in the case infection does occur, the antiviral effect of interferon helps to ensure that the disease, in the case of COVID-19, develops with less intensity, symptomatology, and duration in the individual.
With 93% effectiveness, nalzaferon has been applied to medical personnel in the red zone of hospitals, where the fight against COVID-19 is waged, and to health collaborators working abroad. It is also being supplied to travelers and those who lived with them and to tourist sector workers.
The Cuban Protocol of Action against COVID-19 always took into account as one of the fundamental guidelines to use of prophylactic drugs to prevent infection and passage of sick individual to stages of severity and chronicity.
Dr. Hugo Nordarse explains that there are 3 key principles to the Cuban Protocol of Action against COVID-19. That people don't get sick, that if they do get sick, they don't deteriorate to a worse condition, and that if they do, they don't die.
Fabiola López, TeleSUR, La Habana.
In Chile, 19 more communities have been put under lockdown as part of the measures to face a new wave of COVID-19 infections in the country. The government tightened their restrictions as daily case numbers continue to surge, with the total now surpassing 1 million. On Thursday, the government announced the closure of the country's borders from the 5th of April till the end of the month in a bid to curb the spread of the virus. In addition, the curfew in place for the past year has been brought forward 1 hour to start at 9 p.m. and run until 5 a.m. The Honduran government has hired an elite U.S. law firm in a failed effort to derail a drug trafficking probe of the president's brother. The Washington law firm Arnold & Porter was hired to lobby U.S. prosecutors to call off a state-sponsored drug trafficking probe of President Juan Orlando Hernandez's brother, who was sentenced this week for smuggling 185 tons of cocaine into the United States. According to the Washington Post, the law firm tried to influence prosecutors to avoid a conviction for Juan Antonio Tony Hernandez, who also is a former Honduran congressman. Prosecutors claim that lawyers warned them of collateral consequences of the process regarding their relations with Honduras, as well as about the U.S. military bases in the country and unrelated immigration issues. The Bolivian far right is calling for a pact of silence, whereby it pledges to abandon its claims of electoral fraud in the 2019 general elections, which were used as an excuse for the coup against Evo Morales' government. However, the movement towards socialism has rejected this so-called formula for impunity. Our correspondent Freddy Morales has the story.
The message from the country's far right is to enforce a sort of tie. They stop accusing the movement towards socialism of electoral fraud in 2019, which has never been proven, and in return, the party stops its denunciations of a coup and holds the open legal proceedings for the extreme violence carried out by the de facto government.
It's now a matter of understanding that the trials currently on the way are not trials established within the country's regulations. Human rights are violated.
The movement towards socialism was overthrown in November 2019 under the pretext of electoral fraud denounced by the Organization of American States. One of the victims of the ensuing repression was Patricia Arce, mayor of Pinto, in 2019.
Not even an animal is treated as I have been treated, and not only me, but many people. Where was the Catholic Church? Where were they to demonstrate against this? Where was the OAS? Where were the international organizations?
The shock groups preparing the coup humiliated Mayor Patricia Arce. They cut off her hair, beat her, sprayed her with red paint, and thus humiliated. They paraded her around her municipality.
We have identified 20 people. We have sent details to the prosecutors in charge. We have sent photographs and where they lived, and the photograph of those who were participating, and what the extent of their participation was. They have gone on to burn the municipal building. These have been very difficult moments that we have experienced, and now the Catholic Church comes along and says we should not talk about a coup d'etat or fraud.
Only with the return of democracy did the judicial process promoted by Patricia, now a senator of the plurinational state, begin to progress, with difficulty, supposedly due to the lack of evidence.
They were summoned to testify, and according to the prosecutor's evaluation, there was not enough evidence despite the fact that we had presented. There's only 5 people charged, and to date, there is not a single detainee.
While the victims of the coup and the de facto regime are demanding justice, the far right, its media, and the Organization of American States are promoting what they have called a pacification agreement that involves suspending all judicial proceedings and releasing those who have been detained so far as part of the investigations into the violence.
I will take a short break now, but more stories coming up, so don't go away. Welcome back. The United States and Iran said Friday that they will begin indirect talks with other major world powers to work towards restoring their 2015 nuclear deal. U.S. State Department spokesperson Ned Price described the resumption of negotiations scheduled for Tuesday in Austria as a wealthy step forward, but added that no immediate breakthrough was expected. Former President Donald Trump pulled the U.S. out of the Iran nuclear deal in 2018, while President Joe Biden has said rejoining the agreement is a priority for his administration. However, Iran has stressed that the U.S. must lift the sanctions against the country in order for a return to the deal. According to the senior official with the European Union, the aim is to reach an agreement within 2 months. In the United States, a police officer had died from after a car rammed into a security checkpoint outside Congress. U.S. Capitol Police confirmed early that 2 officers had been injured after a car attempt to run through a security checkpoint near the heavily guarded northern entrance to the U.S. Capitol. The suspect was later killed in custody after attacking another officer. Capitol staff was instructed to remain inside the building and away from doors and windows. Acting Chief of the Capitol Police, Yomanda Pittman, confirmed that the suspect tried to ram through a Capitol security barrier with his car at approximately 1:42 p.m. local time before exiting the vehicle with a knife in hand and tried to lunge toward the 2 officers present who opened fire. And Robert Conti, acting chief of the Washington, D.C. police, stated that the attack does not appear to be terrorism related. Conti also said that the suspect does not seem to have been previously known to law enforcement and confirmed that there doesn't seem to be an ongoing threat at the Capitol at this time. The attack comes less than 3 months after the deadly insurrection by supporters of Donald Trump. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has ordered the flags at the Capitol to be flown at half-mast following the officer's death.
There's not a lot of information that we can release to the public at this time, but we certainly will be working very closely with our partners at the Park Police, at the U.S. Capitol Police. At this time, I just want to extend my deepest condolences on behalf of the entire Metropolitan Police Department to all of the officers at the United States Capitol Police for their service and unfortunately for the loss of life that have occurred here today.
This has been an extremely difficult time for U.S. Capitol Police after the events of January 6th and now the events that have occurred here today. So I ask that you keep our U.S. Capitol Police family in your thoughts and prayers.
And health authorities in the United States have announced that fully vaccinated people can travel within the country without getting tested for the coronavirus or having to go into quarantine afterward. According to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, more than 100 million people in the U.S., or about 30% of the population, have received at least one dose of the COVID-19 vaccine. A person is considered full vaccinated 2 weeks after receiving the last required dose. For people who haven't been fully vaccinated, the agency is sticking to its recommendation to avoid unnecessary travel. For those who do decide to travel, the CDC says they must get tested 1 to 3 days before their trip and 3 to 5 days after. Hundreds of internally displaced people from Mozambique have finally found shelter a week after a jihadist attack on the town of Palma. After spending days hiding in forests following a deadly raid on the northern Mozambican town of Palma, survivors have found safety at a shelter in a sports center in Pemba, 200 kilometers from Palma. The coordinated attack left dozens of people dead and more than 8,000 displaced. Many more are still missing after the insurgency. The attack launched last Wednesday was the latest in the string of more than 830 organized raids by the Islamist militants over the past 3 years, killing more than 2,689 and uprooting nearly 700,000.
This is what happened in Palma. The bandits stayed there for 15 hours. The population of Palma fled. 8 people died on the boat, in the water, on the way to Mujane. Another 8 people hid in the bush. People died. The bandits were looking for people. There's a deep suffering.
Guinea reported its first new case of the Ebola virus in almost a month. The World Health Organization revealed that the new case was registered in Soluta village in the southeast of the country on Thursday. This is the first new case recorded since March 4th and bringing the number of cases to 19, including 8 deaths, disrupting the countdown that began on March 24 when the WHO announced the recovery of the last Ebola patient in Guinea. The government and the World Health Organization are continuing to Ebola vaccination campaign to respond to the health emergency. In Mali, 4 United Nations peacemakers have been killed and 19 others wounded in an attack on an EU base on the northeast of the country. The country's armed forces and the United Nations mission in Mali said in a statement that heavily armed terrorists carried out an attack in which 4 Chadian peacemakers died and several others were wounded in Alawukuk in the Kidal region. According to the UN mission, several attackers were also killed and injured. Terrorist groups such as the Islamic State have been attacking military and civilian targets in central and northern Mali since 2012, with thousands killed and displaced. More news in a minute. Stay with us. Welcome back. Taiwanese security forces have cleaned the wreckage of a train that derailed in a tunnel on Friday, leaving at least 51 people dead and dozens injured. Many passengers were crushed as the train barreled into a truck that had rolled onto the track. Survivors were forced to climb out the windows and walk along the train's roof to safety. According to the government, the truck's emergency brake was not properly engaged and the vehicle slid about 20 meters down a hillside. And minutes later, the train crashed into the truck just before it entered a tunnel.
There was a train to Huailen that passed through at 9:13 a.m. The train's number was 204. It also went through this place. In other words, the collision happened at 9:28 a.m. The truck was at the construction site at around 9 a.m. If a train passed at 9:13 a.m., this means that the truck would have slid on the tracks between 9:13 a.m. and 9:28 a.m.
Pope Francis has held a scaled-back way of the cross procession this Good Friday in a nearly empty St. Peter's Square due to the coronavirus restrictions. It was the second consecutive year that the Via Crucis procession, commemorating the last hours in Jesus' life, was not held at Rome's ancient Colosseum. The service at the arena normally draws thousands of pilgrims and tourists. Candles in the form of a huge cross dotted an empty St. Peter's Square as only 200 people took part, sitting on either side of the Pope in front of St. Peter's Basilica. Turkish protesters have gathered in Istanbul to demand the reversal of a recent decision to withdraw the country from a treaty aimed at protecting women from violence. Friday's protest was part of demonstrations which have been ongoing for almost 2 weeks following the president's decision that Turkey was leaving the Istanbul Convention on preventing and combating violence against women. The convention requires state authorities to take steps to prevent gender-based violence, protect victims, and prosecute perpetrators. According to Turkey's We Will Stop Femicide platform, at least 300 women were murdered in the country last year, but the number could be even higher, with dozens more found dead in suspicious circumstances. Regulators in the United Kingdom have said that they identified 30 cases of rare blood clots after the use of the AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine. The Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency say it has received no such reports of clotting events following the use of the Pfizer vaccine. According to such cases remain extremely rare, as over 80 million doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine have already been administered. Several countries from the European Union have restricted the use of the AstraZeneca shots to those aged over 60 due to the reports of blood clots in younger patients who have received the jab. Spain has received over 1 million doses of the AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine as Europe struggles with surging cases and a slow rollout of vaccination campaigns. Only 10% of Europe's total population has received one vaccine dose, while 4% have received two, according to the World Health Organization. Amid surging cases, authorities in many EU countries, including France, Italy, and Belgium, have been forced to reimpose new restrictions. But after more than a year under such measures, people are becoming increasingly tired. The Chinese pharmaceutical company Sinovac said Friday a third production line for its COVID-19 vaccine has been put into use, doubling its annual capacity of the jabs to 2 billion doses. China is providing COVID-19 vaccines to over 40 countries and 3 international organizations as part of its policy to make them a global public good. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Hua Changbin said that the country is exporting vaccines to more than 40 nations and cooperating with more than 10 others in vaccine research, development, and production. The World Health Organization has warned of the gap between quantities of coronavirus vaccines in wealthy countries and those distributed to poor nations. China has joined the global COVAX mechanism and made clear commitment to provide an initial 10 million doses of vaccines to meet the world's most urgent needs. And we come to the end of this news brief. You can find this and many other stories in our website at telesurenglish.net. And don't forget to join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Jose Daniel Lopez. Thank you for watching.